Hi, this is Danae, and today's video is about how to play rubato on the piano. Rubato is the term that we use in music for the pushing and pulling of time. I like to compare it to what we do when we speak. In speech, we naturally make pauses, we emphasize certain words and hold them a little bit longer, or speak a little bit slower, and then again speak a little bit faster in different moments. And this is what makes us sound natural and alive when we speak. And rubato does the same for music. Within a musical phrase, certain notes can be a little bit faster, one or two certain notes can be a little bit slower. The rubato is what makes the musical phrase sound musical and alive as well, and interesting for us to listen to. I think a piece without rubato would sound incredibly boring and like a machine is playing it. But at the same time, of course, there is always the danger of overdoing it with rubato, taking too much time, and then making it sound almost a little bit ridiculous. So rubato is a very delicate topic. It also is subjective. Certain pianists just love it more than others. But I think that there are some things that we can all keep in mind in order to ensure a beautiful and very musical sounding rubato. So if you're interested to see what I always take into account and try to remember when I'm playing rubato in a piece, then keep on watching. So as I already mentioned, there is no golden rule and no explicit right or wrong with rubato. But I think one thing that almost always applies and that will help you a lot is that if you take a little bit of time, you have to make up for that time later in that phrase, and vice versa. If you play a little bit faster at a certain point, you have to take some more time at the end of the phrase. So basically what I'm trying to say is that overally the time will be the same, but within the phrase, instead of going like this, it goes a little bit like this. So a little faster, a little slower, so that within the musical phrase, within the breath, we are still the same. It's not that the piece suddenly is faster or the phrase is faster. It's just that within the phrase that the tiny differences happen. So let me show you an example. I chose a little excerpt from Chopin's Third Piano Sonata. Chopin, of course, is a composer where you can demonstrate rubato very, very well. And I will play this phrase and you'll see that I take some time, but then I also make up for that time later on. Helps me whenever I'm thinking about rubato is to differentiate between the melody and the accompanying hand. Of course, not every piece is composed in a way that there's accompaniment and melody, but in this case, the example that I chose, it is very clear that the left hand has a kind of accompanying figure and the right hand has the melody. And in this case, very often, the left hand, the one that has the accompaniment, I find should have a rhythm that kind of goes on regularly, no matter what kind of rubato you're doing on the right hand. And then the right hand does the slight rubatos, so that there is some sort of underlying heartbeat in the left hand, and the right hand does the little icing on the cake and does the rubato. Which also means that certain notes won't be 100% together between the two hands, but that is totally fine as long as you're not overdoing it. Of course, in all of this, we're talking about very subtle things, not going half tempo or anything like that. about having to somehow always make up for time that you took or where you went a little bit faster, and also about the left hand going on, which means that generally, of course, my goal would always be to keep the pulse going despite the rubato happening. But then if you do that, there are special moments where you might want to really show, okay, there's something incredible happening there, where all of this doesn't apply anymore. And if it is such a moment where the harmony changes and there's this magical moment happening, or maybe it's very intimate and suddenly you're going super low to the extreme, anything like that, whenever that happens, then you can take the luxury and take time that you don't have to make up for it in the end. But of course, this only works if usually you do always make sure that the overall time is the same and that overall the pulse is going on, so that when that happens, it's very special and the listener will be very surprised and will be drawn into you playing it like that. If you do that every time, of course, it's not going to work. That I would definitely recommend doing is to play through the phrase without any rubato from time to time. That way you can check whether you are doing it a lot, maybe it's become a bit too extreme, or whether you're not doing it enough, or whether there are any other subtle changes you want to do, because you're reminded of what the actual tempo is, especially if you're doing the same rubato again and again, and if you've been playing the piece for a while or practicing it for a while, then you get used to it and you forget how far you actually go. And I have the experience that sometimes when I've played the piece in many concerts and then I do this technique and I just play it without rubato, I am so surprised how strong my rubato has become, and I don't even realize anymore that once I had planned it for it to be this incredibly special moment, but now it's just how I do it. I just take a lot of time. So it's good to kind of reset that and remember what the actual neutral tempo is, and then from there see how far you want to go and whether you want to make any subtle changes. That I would like to mention is to always keep in mind which composer you're playing. The example that I chose today was Chopin, a composer that definitely uses a lot of rubato. But please always keep in mind that if you're playing, let's say, someone Baroque or a classical composer, the rubato styles definitely differ. So don't try to do a Chopin rubato in Bach or anything like that. It doesn't mean that he doesn't have rubato, he certainly does, but it's very different. So always keep in mind which century you're in, which composer you're playing, and try to really, I would say, try to refrain from doing anything super extreme that will then end up sounding like bad taste in a way. Try to always be as true to the text as possible and just adding that little musical icing on the cake, like I would actually describe it, because rubato is what in the end makes the piece special and what adds your style to the composition. Generally, I would say that with rubato, you really have to experiment a lot. I sometimes try many different things to see what musically makes most sense to me in the end. And sometimes I also change the rubato throughout my practicing. So I might practice it in one way for 1 week and then suddenly I do the complete opposite the next week, because I feel like that actually brings out this harmony even better. So really keep an open mind and try many things out. Try practicing even opposites, just so you really get a feel of it. And I think the more you consciously practice rubato, the more you're going to naturally feel it, and in the end not even have to think about it. Because as I mentioned before, rubato is what makes the music sound natural, as if someone was telling a story or as if someone was speaking or singing. So it is something that should not sound planned or incredibly thought through. As always with music and piano playing, of course it has to be thought through, but it shouldn't sound like that. And in the end, it should sound like the natural speech of a person. After you've experimented and tried many different things and really planned a couple of rubatos the way you think it sounds great, I would definitely say let go, enjoy it, and try to just let the music naturally come to you. I really hope that you enjoyed this video, and let me know what you think of rubato, if it's something that you struggle with, or if you have certain tips that would help other people or that you implement when you plan and practice rubatos, or if you maybe don't plan it at all. And I'll see you again in the next video. Bye!